Iran is once again at the center of Western sanctions, this time for its deadly crackdown on non-violent protesters. US President Joe Biden has said that his country will be imposing further costs on the perpetrators of the violence. He added that Washington would continue holding Iranian officials accountable and support the Iranian people's right to protest. The American president, however, did not provide details about the measures that he was considering. Along with the United States, Canada has also imposed fresh sanctions on Iran for alleged human rights violations. The statement released by the Canadian government mentioning systemic persecution of women as part of the rights violations, and specifically highlighting the shocking actions committed by Iran's morality police, which led to the deaths of Mahsa Amini. On the 16th of September, 22-year-old Mahsa Amini died in custody just 3 days after being arrested for violating Iran's strict dress code. She allegedly breached rules that force women to wear the hijab, a headscarf. Massive protests have broken out in Iran since the announcement of her death, and Iranian news agencies are saying around 60 people, including a dozen policemen, have been killed in the deadly protests. But Iran Human Rights saying at least 133 people have lost their lives in the protests across the country. Meanwhile, on Monday, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, backed the security forces' crackdown on peaceful protesters, something that has been globally condemned. He also accused the US and Israel of planning and fueling the protests.
دختر جوانی در گذشت، خب حادثه تلخی بود، دل ما هم سوخت، ولی واکنش به این حادثه بدون اینکه تحقیقی شده باشه، بدون اینکه هیچ گونه امر مسلمی وجود داشته باشه، این نبود که عده‌ای بیان خیابان رو ناامن کنند، ناامنی رو برای مردم به وجود بیارن.
Let's go straight across now to our correspondent Susan Teherani, joining us live from New York at this point. Hi, Susan. What are you picking up on these sanctions that the U.S. is considering against Iran and what they could look like? Joe Biden at this point has not given out any details or indications.
So as you mentioned, I think the devil's in the detail. We need to figure out what these sanctions really entail. The United States has been imposing sanctions on the United States, on Iran, excuse me, for the past 43 years. That's nothing new on individuals of the IRGC, on members of the Iranian government. How far these sanctions are going to go, who these individuals are they, the perpetrators of these violent crimes against innocent civilians, and what effect they're going to have really on the crackdown that's been happening on Iran are all questions that need to be addressed. We'll have to wait and see later this week. Another issue is when sanctions are imposed on individuals, we have to see how effective they are. A lot of times these individuals don't have assets overseas, or they've transferred those assets to their relatives who live freely overseas. So if you talk to a lot of Iranians, whether here or inside Iran, they want Joe Biden to do more. For example, they want him to recall ambassadors and representatives of Iran to the State Department and ask for answers on human rights violations on what's happening in Iran, notably what happened at Sharif University, which is an equivalent to MIT University here in the United States, which was a very horrific crackdown where students were locked up in a garage by security forces, and a lot of them were detained and taken away to unknown locations. So while we see some incidents happening online, a lot of them we don't know about. So while this statement was welcomed by Iranians, we don't have the details of what these sanctions are, how effective they will be, and whether or not Iranians will heed to it or not.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.